Good afternoon, everybody. I hope I'm audible. That's one question, uh, we all ask ourselves for the last 2 years. Am I audible, right? So I hope I'm audible. So thank you so much, for taking out time and spending on this most important conversation around, upskilling and cross-training as a top goal. We've gone through the pandemic, and we've also kind of seen cross-training as becoming a key area, as we look at frugality, as we look at organizations really wanting to scale down on their spend and make themselves more frugal, more productive. Cross-training and upskilling is one area which is really becoming the norm, which is really becoming the way forward if you have to really grow and really move forward in your career at any point in time. With this, just a small introduction, from my left to the right, I have with me an esteemed, a very diverse panel today, and I want to share that with you. So, which is a panel which comes with Minaxi, having more than 20 years of experience in business, having working with Upgrad and also worked with Uber and also worked with LinkedIn. Upgrad for business, she heads that business. And then we have Saurabh, who comes from Simpliliearn, also having, from a business perspective, and really it'll be great to hear your insights in terms of how you guys are kind of working on upskilling and cross-training as a tool for your employees. And we also have Appaya coming all the way from Bangalore, for this session. Thank you, Appaya, for flying in. And he comes in from Colliers. Colliers is a real estate consulting organization, and Appaya also comes in with very diverse experience. He's been in operations from Darjeeling Tea Gardens, for 18 years, and then coming into Bangalore for his children and family. That's great, and a great diversity which he brings on the panel. And last but not the least, we have VP and Head HR, Navnidh from Reliance Industries, driving a lot of new initiatives, which we all have heard about Reliance, how they are getting into hydrocarbons and green energy, and she's driving a lot of those initiatives within Reliance. So it'll be great to kind of hear your views about how are you guys taking in upskilling and cross-training within Reliance. So that's great. And that brings me to my first question, cross-training is clearly what we are seeing as the most frugal tool and productive tool to really make your employees more efficient, And where do you see this, Saurabh? So I want to start with you here. Where do you see, versus external hiring? Give us a perspective in terms of how do you see cross-training really helping you versus really going out there and doing external hiring?
Great question, Sandeep, and I hope I'm audible. You've touched upon two of the very interesting things, right? So hiring and skilling together, and these are two problem statements that must be keeping everybody in this room awake in the night, pretty much. So let's first talk about hiring internally versus hiring externally, right? So there are benefits on both sides that we talk about. Of course, external hiring brings about that fresh blood in the organization, that fresh perspective and thought process. On the other side, when we talk about internal hiring, that has huge benefits that we can talk about, right? And we can look at it from different perspectives. So if you look at it from purely hiring metrics point of view, it has a direct impact to your cost to hire, to your time to hire. You can hire frugally, as you mentioned, and at speed. Right? Talking about productivity metrics, it gives, again, speed to deployment. It brings about business continuity. It brings about, things that we can, sort of do it internally, right? And then talking about the third most important aspect, which is about talent metrics, right? Hiring internally moves the needle on talent engagement and talent retention like none other, right? So we know that we are living in the world of the great resignation, the war of talent. We are talking about all these things. Hiring internally would, sort of make the most impact or move the most needle on that. Now, talking about cross-training as a channel to, or as a driver to hire internally, let me take a little bit of a tech or digital, skill angle to this, right? So, when we talk about digital skills, it's changing rapidly. It's changing very, very rapidly. What we learned in our colleges and what we did in our earlier years of employment, that's no longer relevant. Right? And in order for organizations and for employees to remain relevant, I think cross-training is the only way that we can, sort of drive this internal hiring that we are essentially talking about. Now, I'll take a few, examples from, experience of delivering this outcome-based or this internal hiring-based engagements that we are doing with some of our customers. There are two parts of it, right? And there are two processes. There are two distinct processes that sort of come about in terms of initiatives taken by the companies. So there's a push-based initiative and then there is a pull-based initiative. So when we talk about push-based, it's like companies realizing that the skills that we have today may not be relevant for the projects that we are going to take in the future, and hence we need to start cross-skilling people to take up those internal roles, right? And that's like, there are companies who sort of drive those initiatives internally. Then there are pull-based initiatives, which comes about from the culture of continuous learning. It comes about from the culture of internal mobility of resources, where it is highly encouraged, and that's how sort of companies ask for nominations in terms of like if there is a key technological skill or digital skill where the company is trying to pivot into, take nominations and start sort of skilling them so that they become project ready when that gets deployed. So these are, if I just have to add one more angle to it, right? So cross-skilling, again, absolutely important. What we are, there's another trend of taking employment breaks, right? It happens with our women employees very often, right? So people who are coming or joining employment after break.
Correct.
It's very important, and it's actually very difficult for them to, start again where they had left off. And cross-training becomes a medium again to deploy them into the right projects and to, sort of welcome them to job again. So these are some of the ideas when it comes to driving employment through internal talent pool using cross-training as a mechanism.
Fabulous. And Appaya, do you want to come in and share your views?
Correct. Basically, I come from the real estate industry, as you said, and skilled manpower has been a challenge. When I say skilled, like earlier mentioned, they're all technically qualified, but are they right for the job? So those are the challenges we have. They come in with varied experience, so they come in. And therefore, as we said, training is absolutely essential. With training, it also helps them as a career progression, because today's generation all looks at what's for me next. They're very clear, what's it for me next. So this sort of brings that motivation to them and drives them, also helps them to upscale themselves, cross-training. So that's mainly the key. And also, certain times, there is a difficulty, like all cannot be cross-trained across. There are, like, for example, from the industry I come in, like a person in the transaction business can do advisory, because that's what we do, advise clients. So those go hand in hand. Someone in the project management, in the construction, can do valuation, the valuation line, because he's trained, he's qualified to do it, he's been in projects, he knows what's it. So that's my perspective on it. And to end it all, we speak of training, everything, but it's so important that it's driven from top down. And the managers also have the ability to know who's qualified for what and take that forward. Judgmental of people on the ground is so important. So everyone collectively needs to drive it.
Yeah, I think it needs to be in the DNA, right, of the organization.
Absolutely.
When you are looking at certain kind of career path for individuals, it has to be in the DNA. That's a very valid point, in order to kind of make it more effective. Absolutely. And that brings us to the moot question of, how about upskilling? How do you think, Navnidh, and that is where I want to bring you in, because we all know Reliance, has put in so much of effort in the various academies you were sharing with us about just a few hours back or minutes back. So share with us, how are you kind of adopting the upskilling as a tool to make the employees more efficient and doing what they do better, and making the magic unfold, as they say in Reliance.
Thank you, Sandeep. Am I audible? Yeah, looks like, yeah. So thank you, Sandeep. First of all, thank you for the kind introduction, and good afternoon, audience. I think it's a second session post-lunch, but we'll try to make it engaging as much as possible. So coming to the question, Sandeep, upskilling is not a luxury anymore. It's a necessity today, right? Absolutely. And talking of some of the statistics, there was a survey which was done 2 years back by a renowned firm. There are 56% organizations who see that there is a skill gap in the organization. And this is across sectors, right? There'll be some 97 million new jobs or the new roles which will be defined in next 5 years period. And if this pandemic is about to stay, I'm not sure we're going to be witnessing the fourth wave or not. But if this stays, then probably that 97 may become double the number. So that's a skill gap actually that we have in the organizations today. And I think learning by itself, it has to be driven through the culture of the organization, right? Learning is not something which happens in one quarter to the next or the next, and there are some inputs which are given on a regular time. It is a continuous process. Let's talk of the pandemic, Sandeep. February of 2020, were we all prepared to witness something like this at a global scale? But the organizations which had been upskilling over a period of time, even the usage of technology, right? They really manifested, they really harnessed the results, what they were expecting. Talking of the Reliance as an organization, the kind of investments that we've made in last 2 years, right? The kind of partnerships that we've created across globe, I think they have been a benchmark versus the previous years. That's because we were prepared, our workforce was prepared, we were upskilled to use our knowledge and skills on the ground through a different mode of working as well, right? Also, just to exemplify here, Reliance, I mean, of course, all of you all know Reliance is a big organization. It's an ocean. I don't call it as an organization anymore. It's an ocean, right? And we have 30 plus learning academies in the organization. That speaks of the DNA of the organization. So we have a safety as a separate learning academy, manufacturing, fire, civil engineering, mechanical, security, finance, audit, compliances, fraud. These all are different learning academies, and there are complete forces behind these learning academies, right? The kind of investments that we do, I think they are class apart. We have the best of the players who work with us. We have best of the partners who work with us. We try hiring best of the talent in the learning space. No compromises out there, right? And that all is driven by the top. If the top sponsorship is not there, I think we will just be talking in confines of rooms like this and really not seeing the results on the ground. One very peculiar thing which is there with a lot of organizations which have been in existence for some time, Reliance being one, maybe Tata's being another one, and other conventional organizations, maybe Mahindra's, right? There are 4 generations of workforce which is at the work today. Reverse mentoring becomes very, very important.
Absolutely.
I may be comfortable in doing one thing, right? But if my seniors aren't or my juniors aren't, I think somewhere there's a gap in between, right? So we focus a lot on reverse mentoring. We focus a lot on speed mentoring. We have events which are like regular feature in the organization. And I think I see about 100, 150 odd people in the room. And we've done this analysis, and it's very interesting, to really see what is the cost. Any wild guesses in this question is to the audience out here. Any wild guesses, what is the cost of hiring versus the cost of upskilling for a mid-level role as a ratio? Any idea?
Any takers?
So if you talk of cost of upskilling I mean, it's a typical question, right? How much we should upskill, how much we should invest in the learning agenda, right?
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we feel that let's first focus on acquisition, compensation benefits, performance management, talent management, and learning we will take care at the end, which is actually opposite to the real belief. So any takers, if we say that if we don't upskill, a person leaves us, and I'm talking of a middle management person, and the person leaves us less than a year's time, what will be the cost of upskilling versus hiring?
We have so many HR folks here, yeah? I'm sure somebody can answer.
So you're saying
Sir?
4:1, 80-20 means 4:1. You said that, right? Actually, you're very close to that. We did that thing, Sandeep. So if we don't upskill and people leave us within less than a year or within 2 years' time, we are actually spending thrice the CTC because we have to now hire a new individual. There's a cost of hiring, there's cost of time, there's cost of resources, right? There is a productivity cost. For the person to come to the same level of productivity, it will take another 8 months. And if someone joins in a organization which is culturally very strong, another maybe 7-8 months to just understand the culture of the organization. So I think, Sandeep, that's my take on upskilling. So to reiterate, I think we don't have a luxury of not doing it. It's the bare minimum. It's like roti kapda makan, right?
Correct.
For organizations, this is one of the bare minimum necessities. If we don't upskill, I think business imperatives will be far-fetched to be achieved, actually.
Saurabh, do you want to add on to that? I know it's very difficult to add.
No,
I think she said it all.
Yeah, the point was very, very well covered, and the only point that I'll add I'll just add a little color to the skill gap, and it's a necessity now angle to it, especially when we talk about hiring again, right? And let's talk about hiring externally. So gone are the days when like companies used to post JDs, invite applications, then there is a close match, and you are at the luxury of sort of choosing the best candidate that you want to give that job to. Right now, the skill gap is such that it's almost impossible to find that exact match that you're looking at, right? And if you go to entry level, it's even more difficult. So the only option that companies are left with is to hire for aptitude or hire for a near match. And then when the person is onboarded, you upskill that person to take up that job or take up that sort of project which is sort of required.
Absolutely.
So like it is becoming a necessity. Otherwise, you can just keep searching for that ideal candidate, but like yeah, it's not gonna serve you any purpose. So I'll just that's my point.
No, that's a valid, very valid point, Saurabh, really there. And this is where I want to bring in Appaya, and typically cross-training is one aspect where we've seen which allows employees to kind of, how do you think it allows employees to become more team players? How can cross-training really help making employees work in a very team-centric environment?
Okay, yeah. Just going back a bit in the past, like these days employees change jobs, and just a little history. But in the old days, someone started and he retired there. But today you no longer see it. So it's very important that you start with the induction program of when someone joins in, and then you have a mentor, which everyone needs. But all these processes have to be very well looked into and taken care of. Then the mentoring, then you have orientation, which happens all along with it. And then there is also for people who are, that's what I said earlier, when the manager plays a very important role, someone who is really sharp or having, then you put him to a fast track mode so that he is also able to, he is able to cross-train faster. He gives that, you have a mentor dedicated to him. You have that happening. And then also with newer technologies coming, with AI coming into the thing, that's another thing which now from the construction side, that's what we have brought in, the AI technology doing construction. So that's something like a little earlier we were speaking, someone has, he learned Python at this age. So, that's something which I also said, a college lecturer, because you're teaching someone, he now decided he had to learn Python so that he's able to convey it. So for him also, it's literally upskilling right through. It's like, so that's what I have to say. So that's very important. Now coming to the team player part of it. So what happens is when everyone is sort of being cross-trained, and someone goes on leave or something, there's always someone to step in. There's always a helping hand. You also know who you can reach out to. So that way, you create that, oneness among the team, so which is very important. Yeah.
Good. And Minaxi, do you want to add on?
Sure. So Appaya said is pretty well. Our audience has been hearing us for some time, so I just want to bring to focus the different things that we're talking about. So one is skilling, then there's upskilling, and then there's cross-skilling. Yeah. Just to put it in a very rudimentary example, as a young graduate, you want to do an MBA because you want to be skilled for a job. When you're in a job, you want the best job that you want. You want to go work for a particular team or role, and that's where you upskill yourself, which means you kind of go and do a specialization on the MBA that you had. What we are talking about and what Appaya alluded to is cross-skilling. I'm not only in the role that I want, but do I have the flex to have a tangential career as well? Do I improve my job prospects, not just in the company that I'm working for, but as a career per se? And we know today that the workforce of today is not going to have one career, like what Appaya said. We're not going to retire in the company that we're working right now. And most people are going to have 2 to 3 different careers. We have colleagues and friends who are doing organic farming, who've become writers, who've become bloggers, who've become trainers, and that's the beauty of the world that we live in today. The way that I would just add to this, Sandeep, is in our day job, if we get very tunneled into the now and the today, we are doing a disservice to our own selves, our organization, and really our own potential. As team players, as what we are doing together, I would try to address that in terms of employees and employers. So think of us as people and colleagues that we work in. It really builds in a layer of collaboration. And it's amazing for managers in the room because you don't get stuck into the conflicts and the crisis management of different egos between different teams when you're working, and everybody has to work together in today's day and time. So when you have cross-skilling, people will have an appreciation of the other person's role and you're able to collaborate better. That's one. The second one is you'll have empathy for the other team. We see this day in and day out. Product has an issue with engineering, has an issue with HR, has an issue with sales, has an issue with customer success. Once people have those opportunities to understand and learn more about each other's roles, they're able to understand their psyche and their KRAs and really work better, empathize better. The third one I would talk about is just the morale of each one of us. When we work harmoniously, we enjoy coming to work, virtually or in person, depending on where we are as organizations. Now, this is from an employee's perspective. Think about from an employer's perspective, like why should they really focus on it? The first one is productivity. It's not just about people who are doing the job today, but can we have occasions about them finding something else? And in the last year and a half, we've had multiple situations of redundancies. Imagine organizations which already had this layer, they were able to move team members into roles and retain them, and that's a win-win all around. The other one, if you look at it, is more about a company's profitability. The more that you have an opportunity to move your team members around, you can really be on the growth part that companies talk about. Last but not the least, I would say the layer of succession planning that you're talking about. I know Navnidh also spoke about the skill gap, Saurabh spoke about the skill gap. Look at the opportunities that companies have to have a clear path of succession within their own organizations. In the last week, we were speaking to 2 of the largest companies, and they're both speaking about, the heads of HR are speaking about, they're not worried about redundancy because of the roles, but they are worried about redundancy because of the digital age. So they need to make sure that their leaders, their employees have their DNA so that they can flex more.
I think some fabulous inputs there, and that really brings us to the point that how can we use, the tools of cross-training, upskilling, retraining, also succession planning. How can these tools really help us build empowered leaders of the future? That's the next question that comes to our mind. And Minaxi, how do you think?
You weave that in very well. I didn't see that one coming. And that's one of my passion projects. So thank you for putting that to me, Sandeep. So when we're speaking about empowered leaders, I'm reminded of a recent CEO survey that I had read and that was commissioned by, of course, PwC. The survey spoke about a very strong correlation wherein the CEOs who were positive about their financial outlook and their organizational readiness on upskilling, which means the more that they have these policies in their organizations, the more that organization is able to take care of any ambiguity, volatility that comes through. And this is pretty much core and center of it. And if you think about it, if you take this parameter and think about what we are going through, there is so much of competition, there's so much of us running towards the same goals, it really brings in competitive advantage if your leaders are leaning into upscaling themselves and they are building that culture within their own teams, organizations, functions, or even in the partnerships that they play in. I'm reminded here, Sandeep, of something that we are doing at Upgrad. We talk about upskilling and cross-skilling to the world, so we believe in eating our own dog biscuit. About 8 months back, Upgrad initiated a Leaders of Tomorrow program in our own organization, and we handpicked our high performers and our significant contributors. So they were individual contributors, they were first-time managers, they were second-time managers, and we customized regimented upskilling plans for each one of them in the functions that they were in and the function that they wanted to go. We backed it up with individual coaches assigned from within the organization, and then we elevated that by bringing industry specialists. So let's say if we have our finance team members who are a part of it, we went to fintech companies and CFOs in those organizations and requested them to kind of run master classes. For our sales team, we went to the heads of FMCG companies and requested them to kind of run these master classes. Now, while this was 8 months back, just about a month and a half back when we went back to each one of our employees, while we were focused on this, we were even more pleasantly surprised that this bunch of our colleagues who have undergone this exercise, first of all, we don't have a big retention problem with them because they're feeling the investment within the organization. Secondly, they've become more fearless. They've become more fearless in asking for newer things. They're backing up their suggestions by a lot more data orientation. The third one is they're also thinking of innovative ways in how we can grow as an organization, and they are themselves coming up with process optimizations. Now, if you bring it all together, it's really taken a lot of headache, for lack of a better ones, by their own managers and their teams, because this is a very empowered workforce and empowered future leaders who are feeling so invested in an organization. And I would say there is no substitute to that. For our audience today, I will just kind of break this down into 3 pieces, and I'm sure all of you are leaders in your own right. You have team members that you're trying to build as future leaders. The first thing I would say is definitely look at finding this pool of resources that you have. Look at curated paths which are backed by university leadership programs, because you want to kind of have that curriculum with them. Secondly, I would say please lean into your own organizations and the leaders who can be coaches for them, because that's where the relatability, that's where that investment comes through. And third, regular industry interaction wherein you have the best of the industry coming in and talking to your colleagues.
Fabulous. That's a fabulous way to kind of start and make it difficult for the others to match it. So this question is going to all of you. So Navnidh, please, you want to add something on that?
Sandeep, first of all, the definition of leadership has changed over a period of time, right? We no more require leaders who are very stern. We require leaders with high level of empathy, high level of resilience, and to my mind, an excellent uptake on a learning agility. And just to put the perspective to it, we follow in Reliance, while we do any leadership hiring, right? We follow a JARL format. JARL means judgment, achievement, relationship, and learning agility. So learning agility stays as a core value for us when we hire people, not only at the leadership level, but also we've started even at the levels below. When we also look at the succession planning, Minaxi did speak about the succession planning and the successful CXO's, traits, right? At that level, we ensure that what is the learning curve that people can take up. And it was just, while this discussion is going, I was just browsing my eyes again through the audience, and I looking at the demographic of the population here, around 60% looks to be young professionals, and 40% are senior leaders and maybe mid-level leaders, right? And Sandeep, I'm reminded of years back when I used to be one amongst the crowd here, right? But one thing I want to leave, I mean, when I used to sit on the other side of the table, I would always think that what is it that will take me to this stage someday, right? And if I share my story, Sandeep, with your permission, I think upskilling has helped me quite a lot. And why I'm sharing this, because it is not something extraordinary. I have not done an extremely extraordinary work to get where I am, but the only thing I've done is to come out of my comfort zone every time I was thinking that I have achieved and done in life. You know, having worked in, you know, in insurance, having worked in real estate, having worked in manufacturing, having worked in construction, having worked in banking, having worked in consulting, and now with the, you know, the India's largest private sector corporation. I think it's the upskilling which will take you to the next, you know, level and make you achieve what you really believe that you can, right?
So Navnidh, if you allow me,
Absolutely.
you know, I have itching question which is coming to me. We all know that you work directly with the family, you know, in that sense. Anything you want to share with us in terms of what the vision, what the way forward, how can, you know, the cross-training, upskilling, how, I know you shared about the various academies which the family is really looking to invest and build. Anything, you know, soundbite if you can share?
Yeah, so Sandeep, I mean, I don't need to elaborate, but you all have seen in news what Reliance has been doing over last 2 years, right? So we are diversifying to all the areas that possibly we can. And this can't happen without upskilling. While we are hiring a lot of talent from outside, our first focus is to first build the talent inside, right? And actually, buy comes later. First, actually, it is build, then it is borrow, and then it is buy.
Yeah.
Borrow is actually cross-skilling, right? So wherever we can, we see that, okay, this person who's right now working in hydrocarbons business, who looks after the gasoline project, how is that we can make that person responsible for the new energy, let's assume solar or hydrogen, or, you know, or the fuel cells that we're talking about. So that's one piece, you know. And secondly, as an organization, from the top, there is a commitment to the upskilling and reskilling. And I mean, from last few months, I'm also working on a project called Digital Enable People Transformation, which is, and the beauty is that that project is directly driven by the top management. When I say top, means really top. I wouldn't want to name anyone, but it's really driven by the top management. So this itself says the kind of focus that we have. We are creating something like talent market workplace inside. It's like extension of LinkedIn, Monster, Naukri, whatever portals we have. Because in our organization, there are 2 lakh employees, right? And if I know that these are the kind of skills that I require and people have these kind of skills, the system will match it, okay? Out of the 10 skills required, one person has probably 6, 4 of them we can develop, right?
My
so
God, so you're going to put us out of the business?
Sorry?
So you're going to put us out of business?
No, we will still require you somewhere. So Sandeep, these are a few of the examples I thought I'll share. Hope that helps.
No, this is really insightful, really. Appaya, why don't you give a jab at it?
My last bit is, you know, every time when someone joins, especially from college or wherever, the only advice I tell them is the first 10 years of your professional career, you need to just learn, because when you become ultimately a leader, you should be able to, you know, have that sort of vision almost to able to translate it down to people. So that's something which I've always told the youngsters who have joined us, you know, that's it. So it comes across, you know, training, going up, and then ultimately to become a leader. So that's the goal. Succession planning is also one of it. Every leader has to have a second person who would, you know, from within the organization. That's something which we really drive, not getting someone from outside. So those were a few things which I wanted to share with everyone here.
Great. Saurabh, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I think one thing that I'll add is, like, when we sometimes talk about skilling in general and, you know, upskilling, cross-skilling, the first thought that comes to mind is usually on hard skills, right? But the element of soft skills, and we just before, like a couple of minutes before, we were talking about leadership and the importance of upskilling people to become the leaders of future. So the things when we look at the leaders for the people of today to become the leaders of tomorrow are some of these softer aspects, right? So we talk about emotional intelligence, we talk about communication in all forms, which is of major importance. These are some of the things that need to sort of go hand in hand when we talk about some of these hard skills as well. So I think that is how the importance of skilling goes, sort of it cuts across the different skill set for people to sort of go about the regular career transformations that Navnidh talked about, and like some of us in the room have sort of experienced. So that's my take.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to a Q&A. Yeah, so